Hello, people of YouTube. So, today we're gonna get started on the AC system. I'm waiting quite a little bit for this to get started, but I'll show you what we got. Today in the mail, we received this baby. This is a hydraulic air conditioning hose crimp tool. What it does is it creates these patterns on these blank fittings. So the thing I also got were these fittings for my electric AC compressor. This is my electric compressor. It's got a suction port right here, and it's got a discharge port right here. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to probably mount it somewhere right here to sit down in front of the fan, which I have right here. I need to install that. The suction port is going to run all the way along this side of the engine bay, and then it's going to go into the firewall right here, or possibly back there somewhere. I'm not sure quite yet how I'm going to do that, but I'm thinking I'm probably going to run it through there. I'm hesitant to do that because I'm pretty sure that was where the wiring harness comes through. However, there is another hole right here where I think I might be able to run wiring harness as well. So we'll figure it out. But basically, the suction port is going to come from the evaporator, which is inside the cab. That's what exchanges heat from inside the cab for, well, cold, if you look at a refrigeration system right now. I may throw that up. But basically what happens is you have refrigerant, and actually I may just do a explanation right now. Air conditioning basics. Got your compressor right here. Mine has the electric motor on the top, which is what turns the compressor. Usually on standard AC systems in cars, you have a pulley, which is driven from the crankshaft, but since my swap doesn't allow that, we're going to use an electric one. So electric motor turning the compressor. Compressor takes refrigerant from here and it compresses it. It takes it from as a gas and it compresses it into a liquid. Goes from somewhat warm to extremely hot. So this is important. This is very, very essential to AC systems. This hot liquid right here that is compressed from the compressor is much hotter than the ambient temperature outside of the car. So then what happens is it goes through this line into what's called a condenser. And the condenser will take that liquid refrigerant and it will exchange heat from outside and cool the refrigerant. So now it's warm, but it's not super heated the way it is right now, but it's still under a lot of pressure in this line right here. So then what happens is it goes to this expansion valve, and through laws of thermodynamics, when something goes from a high pressure to a low pressure, generally there's a temperature drop. So in this case, we have a very high pressure liquid right here, and it goes into a gas, and R134A, the properties of it say that at higher pressures in liquid, you get a very high temperature. However, when it expands into a gas, it drops to a very low temperature. And that's where we have our evaporator. The low temperature gas, much cooler than the inside temperature of the cabin or inside the car, will go through this evaporator. So that's where you get your cold air. You're actually exchanging heat from inside the cab with the refrigerant. And then after you've exchanged the heat goes from the air into the refrigerant, and then it goes back into the compressor to repeat the process. Okay, so that's how air conditioning systems work. So what we're going to do is we're going to try out this crimp tool with some of this size 10 barrier hose, and we will see how it goes. So let's take this off first so we don't damage anything. These fittings are really nice because they come right with the O-rings, and the guy who I bought these from on eBay, he was like, I know what you're doing. So he included these nice fitting caps for the low side, and I have one for the high side around here somewhere. I think it's already on the air dryer, but okay, we're gonna try this out. And we want to use the size 10 dies right here. We have two of them. the way these work is you take the pin right out, set the dies in there. Somehow, I've never actually done this before, so this is going to be a little tricky. Okay, so you got to set the middle one in first, and then you can set the corner pieces in. So you just kind of crimp it down like that, and then it should click right into place. Okay, so let's close that up, put the pin back in, and then what we can do basically is probably set this bad boy in here. Got this dial on the side, and just make sure that it's on work, otherwise it'll slide back out. Give it a few pumps and it should close right up. So basically I'm going to set this so that it just starts to make contact right about there. Okay, that feels about right. So now we're going to take our barrier hose, unroll this a little bit. And as you can see on these AC fittings, they have an inner tube and they have the outer compression ring. So basically this outer compression ring is what malforms and conforms around the hose so that you make a nice airtight and pressurized seal. So let's give this a shot. Starting to deform a little bit. It's looking good. I'm not quite sure how hard I'm supposed to squeeze this thing, but I mean, it's not easy to do, but it shouldn't be because you're basically deforming metal with hydraulic fluid. Okay, so now what we do is we just undo the release. She slides right out. I guess take the pin out, the back there. Wow, guys, look at that. Would you look at that? Check that out. That is friggin' mint. Holy crap. Alright. I mean, that's friggin' in there. That's solid. You know, that's not going anywhere. Hopefully this holds pressure. I mean, I think it will. Hopefully it will. Damn. Okay. Cool. So we left off by crimping some of the AC lines, and we have some of those installed right now, but what I've been working on lately is this. Oh, Jesus, it's heavy. All right, so this is the electric air conditioning compressor that I bought on eBay. I've got one of the lines hooked up right here, but what I did was I took the stock 944 airbox mount and I welded on basically like a bracket that will hold the compressor, and it kind of sits on the fan shroud, and I'm not too worried about that. I'm pretty confident in my welds, so I really am not worried about my fan shroud getting damaged from having just a little piece of metal sit on it. No big deal. So we got that mocked up. Next step, we're going to get this permanently installed, but what I need to do is I need to shave away, I'll show you. What I need to do is I need to shave away the little part of this bracket right here so that this inlet tube for the compressed gas can have enough space, because right now the bracket doesn't sit flush right here, and I want this compressor to sit further back so it's further away from all the belts and stuff. I'll show you guys what's going on. So what I've got going on right now is this is how the airbox plate mounts, and the compressor is going to sit right here. So the challenge is to get the compressor to sit far enough away from all these belts, and what's going to end up happening is this low pressure hose is going to have to sit in here like that somehow. So that's going to have to sit on there like that, and I'm not super concerned about the belts, but I just want to make sure that this is far enough away as possible so that, you know, we're mitigating any possible issues with belt interference. And, you know, I've got a couple inches of clearance, so I'm not super worried, but I just want to have, because this will slide back a little bit, you know, so just giving myself as much space as possible. So I'm not super worried about the AC project. That's pretty straightforward. It's just, you know, making hoses and crimping connections and mounting up the compressor or whatever. You know, there's a little spot down on the high pressure side of the condenser that I'm gonna have to get some thicker hose so I can mate the two. No big deal. What I am concerned about is on the 944s, they have what's called like a unibody. So there's a lower floor pan, there's like an upper floor pan, you get the frame that's in the middle. So my lower floor pan, they've got like runners that go on each side of the car. And on the passenger side of the car, one of the runners is pretty well rusted out. So I got a piece of sheet metal that I am going to cut and fit and probably do a little bend, and then I'm going to weld it into place underneath the car. And you guys remember how much I like welding underneath cars. Usually you use a lift for this kind of stuff, but I don't have a lift. We'll see what happens. A couple concerns right off the bat is getting myself under there into a comfortable position so that I can, you know, get my torch underneath there and basically into a position where I can make it halfway, well, it needs to be more than halfway decent. These need to be pretty good welds, because this directly affects the structural rigidity of the car and how it performs. So, you know, I'm gonna need to have some high attention span on this and make sure it's done properly, because I don't want to mess this up. I don't want to blow holes through anything. I don't want to catch anything on fire. Yeah, this is gonna be an interesting project, so we're gonna see what happens. What I'll probably end up doing is grinding away as much. So underneath the car, they put on this, it's like a bed liner material that's not really, it's like really thick rubber that they've coated on the underneath side of this belly pan. Water must have gotten in there somehow and just rusted it out. It's what happens on almost 40-year-old cars. So we're gonna grind away as much of the rust as possible, and we're gonna grind away as much of that rubberized coating that we can that's near the welds so that nothing catches on fire. When I was welding on the airbox mount yesterday for the AC mount, there were these rubber gaskets that were inside the mounting holes, and one of these things just straight up caught on fire. I was concerned that my helmet was running out of battery, but what was really happening is the light sensor on the helmet right here, these things have a flash sensor on the top here, and what it was doing, it was picking up the flames and it thought it was still welding, and so it was going dark, and I was like, wow, is this thing like shit in the bed? And then I flipped up the hood and I saw that the mount was on fire, and I was like, oh. better at welding. Some on the backside too. For added structural rigidity. You know, and I mean, just kind of hurt my hand there. This thing's pretty stout, so I already marked up where I'm going to cut this bracket to clear the high side pressure hose. So, give it a shot. See what happens. I'm not too worried about this. The kit came with like a 3-piece rubber bushing set and then these sleeves. So these are like a stainless sort of, it's just a bushing of some sort if you really want to get technical on me. But these sit inside the rubber bushings, whatever you want to call them, to isolate vibration and harmonics of the actual compressor and, you know, keep it from shaking all over the place when the car goes over bumps, etc. My issue is the bolts that I got are just a little short, and the bolts that I got the other time when I tried this were like right at the very edge of the bushing. So I got these ones and they're a little longer, but the thing about it is the entire thing is too long anyways, so I'm just gonna I'm gonna cut these sleeves and then I'm gonna use my shorter bolts. So instead of using these long jammas, I'm gonna use these shorter ones just because I can and it's easier, and because I'm gonna cut these things anyways. So let's do that. It's just gonna make life easier. Now we'll have plenty of thread engagement. We won't have to worry about this thing flopping all over the place or losing its nuts and falling and then hitting a belt and causing my water pump to seize and then overheating the engine and killing my car. I cut it a little shorter and use the washer to essentially compress this inner rubber section, and that will create a large larger interior diameter of the compressor flange, and then it'll hold it more snug in place. So I think I'm gonna do that. That sounds like a better idea. Stick that sucker in there and see how he does. I like that. That's good. Cool. Now that's not gonna friggin' flop around or anything. These are probably a little too short, but it's okay. It's fine. All these things are really for is just to keep the bolts inside from rubbing the rubber too much, and then threads in the bolts will absolutely destroy the rubber. So you use these to keep them from destroying the rubber. That's it.